So I've had this truck for a little while now, and ever since I've had it, it's had a relatively minor, I thought at the time, relatively minor clunking sound, like a suspension steering something, right? Something was loose. And it wasn't super loud and it didn't handle funny, so I'll get to it. It's gotten worse and worse and worse over time. Now it's really bad. I assumed at the time that it was sway bar links, because they're pretty common to wear out over, a couple 100,000 miles. So, in 20 years, 200,000 miles for sway bar link bushings particularly to go bad, not crazy, pretty typical. So I bought some and was ready to replace them. And then when I took the wheel off, the sway bar links aren't that bad. Like, they're not even really bad at all. I kind of think they've maybe been replaced, not recent, but not original. Well, then what is it? So sometimes suspension stuff can be a little bit hard to diagnose. Suspension steering noises can be hard to diagnose because sometimes it only does it while you're driving and you can't really, put your head under there while you're on the road. And a lot of times even the noises that they only really happen when the vehicle's under load, because it sort of engages all the suspension. And once you jack the car up, take the wheels off, everything pulls down away from itself, away from the vehicle, and it kind of tightens up. And so the stuff doesn't move as much as it does when it's compressed. And certainly not when it's got the weight of the vehicle or the bumps in the road. So they can be hard to diagnose sometimes, and sometimes they're not that hard. I'll show you a little bit why that's true here. Sometimes you can just tell by looking at them. Sometimes you can't though. So I'm going to give you a couple of tips and tricks on how you can try to diagnose some of these things, and then some things to look for when you're trying to make a visual inspection that might give you some clues. And in our case, you're going to see some of this stuff is going to be fairly obvious. Shoot, we got a lot to do, so let's get to it. So one of the tests you can run on a vehicle for sway bar links, if you're hearing a clunking sound, is to rock the car back and forth. And if you rock it back and forth and you consistently hear a steady clunk, clunk, clunk on the swing, that's typically the sway bar, the stabilizer bar bushings. That sway bar is either clunking inside its brackets or the end links around the control arm. I've done a couple of cars with that. I think the Trailblazer we did the sway bar links, the Chevelle I did the sway bar links. So I've done a few of those. I'll link a couple of videos for that here as well for different other vehicles to do sway bar links, but they're generally the same. So I did that here. I rocked this vehicle and it clunked real bad. And like, well, clearly that's sway bar. So I bought sway bar links. And then I went to go do them, like I said, and it wasn't that. So I actually don't even know if I'm going to do them because they're not that bad, and everything else I have to do doesn't interact with them. This is a different problem. It's the same solution, but there's a different problem on driver and passenger side, but there's problems in both. So I'll show you what I got. A couple things you want to test when you're looking at steering, suspension, any kind of noises or vibrations. Brakes are fairly common. The thing that would cause some vibration if your rotors are worn funny or your brakes are worn unevenly. So you can check those. I already did that. Plenty of pad left. And everything's on fairly straight and even. This spins freely without any trouble. There's no grooves cut in the front or back of it. So it's not that. The next thing is you can test for some play in the rotor and the whole mechanism itself, whole hub. Side to side, if you get some play side to side, so you're gonna get, this is up off the ground, there's no tires on it now. So I can turn a steering by hand. So the fact that it moves isn't really that big an issue. The question is is it sloppy? Does it rattle when I move it? And it does a little. Bad tie rod. So if you get any kind of play this way, or in this case, like I said, there's something that are obvious, just visually, this boot is about gone. So that's usually a telltale sign that these are worn out. And if you can wiggle it by hand like that, so you hear that rattle, that metal on metal. So that'll do that just in regular driving, but also that means this is not working very well. So it isn't terribly sloppy. It moves a little, but it's not too bad. But just the fact, if for nothing else, if I didn't notice any noise or any feel to it, just that sloppy boot will be bad enough. The inner tie rod up at the top also has There's some grease from the inner boot because that's split open and grease is leaking out, so that also needs to be replaced. The next thing I want to do is so that's side to side, go top to bottom. So top to bottom, just wiggle it like this. Usually if you get a lot of slop in that, it's usually a bearing. And in these vehicles, these modern vehicles, you don't really replace the bearings anymore. You just replace the whole hub assembly. So all this would have to come off, and you replace the hub, which is this piece you see that kind of it's sticking out through the rotor. It goes all the way to the back. I don't get a lot of play there. What I get though, if I really reef on it, I don't know if you can hear that or not. That's coming from up here, the top of the control arm, where the control arm meets the frame. So the bolt or the bushing in here has gone bad, and the arm itself is, this bushing sits inside and the bolt goes to the middle of it. If that bushing starts to wear out, it starts to rattle inside that control arm sort of hole, and then that's going to be rattling against it because it's moving too much, and it's going to rattle, bouncing, hitting other pieces of metal. The other thing it's going to do, it's really going to mess up your ride quality. It's going to mess up your stability, because everything is designed to interplay. It's interconnected. It's like, your thigh bone's connected to your hip bone kind of thing. And so if one of those joints is off, it throws off the geometry and throws off the function of all the other parts. They rely on those other parts to be good. The other thing, if you peek around in here, you can see this shock bushing is gone. It's not just worn out. It ain't there. It's just an open space. And that's gonna really rattle under load. So let me get you down here and I'll show you all of this. I don't know if you can see that moving in there. I shouldn't be able to move that by hand. That's way too loose. It's fine on this side, but not on this side. Right here, that should have a bushing in it, and it's just a hole. I can stick my finger all the way through. That's bad. That's not good. So the shock needs to be replaced. This control arm, at least the bushing needs to be replaced, but they're kind of hard to do. You got to press the bushings in, and the control arms themselves are not terribly expensive. It's just kind of easier to replace the whole thing faster, for sure. And I have to replace the other one. This is the passenger side. I have to replace the other one on the driver's side. I'll show you why here in a second. So at that point, I kind of want them to be a matching pair. So I'm going to replace them both anyway. This is the tie rod end, the outer one, and this is just a mess. This is not good. So that's got to be replaced. And the fact that I can wiggle it pretty good by hand. And then up here, this boot is cracked. You can pull right off. So that's also swiveling way too easy in there. So we're going to replace that too. Now let me turn you to the driver's side and show you what I mean over there. We've got some fairly similar issues on the driver's side. Same tie rod end. This is a little stiffer. Doesn't move quite as easy as the passenger side did, but the same problem with the boot. There's just nothing here, which means there's not gonna be much grease left in it. And the same thing with this boot up at the top. That's all jacked up. You see there's the sway bar links. This one's got a little bit of dry rot to it, but the bushings are intact. So I don't know if I'm gonna replace those or not. Same thing with the shock at the bottom here. There's just no bushing left in there. Over here on the control arms, the same test. We go this way, we don't get a lot of play. Here, we do. So you might, so I said before, you get some up down play. It might be a bearing, but in this case, I can actually see and hear this moving up inside here. So that's the upper ball joint's bad. So in these control arms, the upper ball joint is part of the control arm. So again, you just replace the whole control arm. So although the top bushings are fine, the ball joint's bad. So we've got to replace this control arm. I'm just going to replace the other one. So for both sides, we're going to do control arms, shocks, and tie rods, both inner and outer. We'll see about sway bar links. I might just wait and see if they're okay and do those another day if they still need to be done, because they're not connected to any of these things. So it can be, these are all connected together. So since I got to have everything apart, I'll do all those. Sway bar links don't look like they have to be done. And it isn't one of those things like, well, since I got it apart, I might as well do it. I won't be taking those apart unless I choose to. So for now, I'm going to wait. And if I don't need them, I'll send those back and save myself a little money. We're going to get started on the driver's side. Now, I don't know if there's a order. You know, if you're doing these, you should do them like this in this order. You know, control arm, then do this first and do that second. I actually don't have any idea. What I am gonna do, there's some plates here which I believe are alignment adjustments. So I'm gonna make a mark on those where there's a little pin right here where those are. I can try to move them back to where they were and get this alignment as close as possible. When you do, anytime you do kind of dramatic changes or taking stuff apart in here and putting it back together, you almost never get it back exactly where it was, which means you almost always have to get an alignment done, and I don't have the equipment to do that. So I'll have to get that done, but for right now, I just want to try to get close. So at least when I'm driving to the shop to get the alignment, I'm not fighting a terrible, you know, wonky alignment. And maybe I'll get lucky and I'll get it pretty close. I'm gonna get a paint pen. Actually, some nail polish works really good just to make a, you know, a line on everything, and start taking stuff apart. I'm trying to keep as much connected together at once so that the stuff doesn't fall apart. Just one piece at a time. See how that works. And maybe I'll wish I had done something different, and then I can learn from that on the other side. So actually I'm gonna take this whole housing off. I think it'll be a lot easier to get the shock off and get tools in here. Let's start there. So we got a couple screws over here and some pins. These are kind of like Phillips head screw pins. Sometimes they don't like to unscrew. To get a little stripped. So if I can get back behind this one, get some pressure on it. There we go. You gonna come out? You're not. Okay. Be that way. Okay. Well, we'll never see that again. That's fun. It was overrated anyway. Oh, I'm gonna hit the bottom. I missed. There's like 47 clips in here, give or take. Wiring harness clip up there. Okay, now we got space. So that's good. So I think I will start with the, I don't know, the shock is going to give some pressure, some hold of this. When this comes off, this is going to flop forward. The tie rod will hold it a little bit. Oh, I got to mark these. That's right. That's the next thing I got to do. Let's do that first. But I think I will take the control arm off first, just because I think it's going to make it easier to get to the shock if the control arm's out of the way. So I'm not going to be able to get in there with an impact, which might convince me to take the shock off first. I want to hit that with some PB Blaster, but PB Blaster will take the mark off, especially if I do it with a pen. Nail polish I think will be a little more resilient. Let's do that. Let's see if I can find that old nail polish somewhere. Okay, so we got a line here. Over here. I don't know how good this nail polish is. Stole this from my wife many years ago. And kind of surprised it's still liquid and not all dried up. We'll just make one big line across all three. To line them up. For now, good enough. 20, 21. Okay. Well, that's awesome because I don't have two 21mm sockets. And I don't have a 21mm wrench to hold the other side. The 7/8 though, which I think is pretty close. Maybe it's 13/16 is the one I'm thinking of. And I can do it with a crescent wrench. That might work. So 13/16, that's what I'm looking for. It's nice working on southern trucks where there's very little rust underneath. Okay, so that's holding that up for now. That's just a clip. There's a bracket here. It looks like a 10mm. I want to take that off. Now, sometimes these ball joints, there's the rod, kind of the bolt that goes down through. If these are bad, it's going to just spin. There's no resistance to it, so I'll have to hold it with another wrench. Since I got to do it with like an open end wrench or a combination wrench. I won't be able to do it with a socket necessarily because it's just going to rotate. I'm going to hit it with some lubricant just to make it as easy as possible. Okay. Let that soak for a second while we get this stuff off. So that's just a clip. Okay. And then let's see, what is that? That's the wheel speed sensor. Okay. Let's get that out of there too. For now, I'm just gonna put that back in there just so I don't lose it. Yeah, on the other one. I don't know if you're gonna see that with this brake line in the way, but there's a bolt or a nut right there. No, it's sitting still. Okay. Okay. This is one of those jobs where it definitely would be better to have a lift. This whole getting up and down stuff on my knees is for the birds. That's pretty good. Maybe a bigger hammer to get that in there. There we go. I'm gonna get underneath that bushing. Well, that's being stubborn. I'm replacing it anyway. I'll have to be nice to it. There. If at first you don't succeed, get a bigger hammer. Okay. That's loose. So now we'll come up top. Now these were pretty loose. So I'm just going to take them out. Those have a flat edge, as does this bracket. Yeah, so this changes the geometry of this. As this is turned in different spots, it rotates this out. So we gotta make sure we keep that alignment best we can. Let's also keep them on the same side. So let's put the left one on the left and the right stuff on the right. So there was the ball joint. You can see it's pretty flimsy. You can also kind of rattle it, and just like the other ones, the boot's just gone. So since in these you can't really replace the ball joint, you gotta replace the whole control arm. So that's what we're doing. Since I have this open now though, I'm gonna get the shock removed. So same deal, this might just spin. It does. Oh, there it goes. Sometimes it doesn't want to break loose. This top part just rotates around the bottom part. That's kind of what it's doing now. So, gotta kind of hold it. Sometimes that just is not gonna go. Yeah, see now it's starting to spin in there. That's what I'm talking about. See how that's rotating? I can hold this, but it spins inside, and this is spinning up here. I just can't grip that tight enough. So there's a hex head on the top here. As always, as you guys are watching this, for those of you who have experience with this, if you see a faster way, more efficient way, comment down below. I mean, it won't help me now because I'm in the middle of it, but it'll help the next guy. And we'd all like to learn from you, so let us know. All right, it's almost off. What if I could get a socket? Oh yeah. At the point now where a deep well socket would probably go much faster. Yeah, that was a lot faster. You numbskull. So, for those of you that commented down below already, how about power tools? Dork face? Yep, good idea. Brilliant. Why didn't you suggest that a while ago? All right, now I gotta take the bolt off at the bottom. Again, partly because, I've got the top undone already, but if this has a hard time coming out, that's where you want to move this up and down and try to relieve some pressure. But this had no pressure on it because the shock is bad. So I'll put this back together before I dig into the tie rod. So let's start reassembling. Let's get our parts out here. Go in reverse. Shock first, then control arm. I went with Monroe shocks. They're a known brand. They're a known commodity. They're not terribly expensive. They're kind of a decent middle ground. You know, you can buy more expensive shocks like Rancho or Bilstein or some of the fancy shocks, and you can buy way cheaper Chinese, whatever. But who knows how long they're gonna last, right? So I figure I'd meet in the middle here. Monroe's got a good reputation, been around a long time, so I'm gonna go with them. It comes with the nut for the top and all of the bushings and washers and stuff that I didn't put on there before I stuck it on. Just reuse the bolt for the bottom. I'll get that back out and make sure I get the bushing, at least with the top bushing on first. Comes with the 2 bushings and 2 of these washers. The washer goes, it's kind of a concave bevel washer. So put the bevel down so that the shock pushes against the bevel. Push that bolt back through. Let's pin that wrench against the sidewall. That's the lower control arm. And then give this all of the pound feet. Every single one of them. There we go. When we raise this back up, we'll lock that down at the top. For now, let's get this new control arm back on. These are what appears to be little Chinese knockoff pieces, mostly because it's what I could get. So, you know, like I said, it's always a balance. Balancing price, balancing quality. So these are probably not going to be as good a quality. They were certainly a much better price, but the build quality looks pretty good. They've got greasable fitting on the top. They have a castle nut on the bottom, which I'm a big fan of, versus the lock nut. So I'm just gonna get these put in. They're gonna go in a little tougher because they're not as worn out, obviously. It just seems obvious. So I hit on the left side, pushes the right side in, the right side pushes the left side in, right? So just trying to get it far enough where I can get the bolts in and hold it still. That one's in there good. Hit it with a deadpan. That's my sense of humor. A dead blow hammer, so it doesn't, mess it up too much. Okay, that's lined up. I think we're pretty good here. Yeah, no, we're off kilter on this one just yet. We got a hole accessible here, sort of. There we go. And then our back plate goes on here. I don't think we ran all the way, but that's okay. Now, obviously, you don't have to do all of this if it's not all has to be done. Just do the parts that have to be done. Don't overdo it. I'm doing all the parts I had to do, and I didn't want to take it apart twice. But you gotta do what your budget allows you to do. And sometimes it isn't what you'd like. So do the best you can with what you have, with the resources you have. So you can see on this shock, it's kind of egg-shaped. It's been banging around in there and it's starting to elongate. It was eventually gonna break. And then we've got all kinds of bad stuff happening. So now I gotta line this up. Oh, I need a washer. If you're not familiar with these castle nuts, this washer goes on first. Get there for a second. And then this castle nut goes on because it looks like a castle. And then there's a hole in that bolt, and this goes through that hole and holds the nut so the nut doesn't walk its way back off. For now, I just want to get it attached. So it doesn't pop back out on me. There we go. But this should be flush here. It's not. It's still got a little ways to go yet. Now we'll raise it back up and see if it pushes its way into that ball joint. Oop. Sorry about that. Nope. So I may have to draw it in with wrench or socket. Just gonna snug it for now. All right, I gotta tighten those up. Those, I don't know if I can get, I may be able to. Those were 21, if I recall. Okay. I guess I'll do it by hand. Fine. I was looking forward to doing it by hand, so whatever. It's good exercise. I don't have a 21 millimeter and a 3/8 socket. My power ratchet's a 3/8 ratchet. And I can't find my 3/8 to 1/2 inch adapter. So, do this by hand like real men. Okay, this is not on right. Actually, before we tighten that, I see my lines are no longer lined up. So it looks like it has dropped, this side has dropped down, which brings it out. So it's got to go in. No, it's got to go out. I had it wrong. Backwards. It's got to come out. Well, that's fun. Actually, now that's attached. So let's just let this go. That's better. Okay, let's tighten that up then. Like I said, it's not going to be dead on. I'm just not that good. So I'll still plan to get an alignment done, but hoping this at least gets me close. Okay. Ain't bad. It's close. It's close. I'm gonna raise this up. Push that shock up in there. Before I get too far, let me get that back on. Just because it's on my mind before I leave and go on the interwebs and check turkey speckies. Because otherwise I'll forget. So that is for this. And that plugs in there. Okay, that's connected, that's connected, that's connected. We never took that off. We're good. Okay, let me go look at torque specs. I'll be right back. So the top ones are 140 foot-pounds. So yeah, all of it. And the ball joint nut is 37 pounds. All right, 30, so we'll go to 40 and back up a bit. So there's 40. And then back up 3 to 37. Lock it in. What size did I say that was? Is it 18 or 15? I think 15. It's definitely 18. Okay. There we go. Okay. Now, I'll take our cotter pin. See if I can get you down in here. Trying to line up with that hole. Actually, I think it's moving with it. There we go. There. So now it won't walk back off. Okay. Now we're gonna finish the shock. Now that we have a newer one in here and it's yellow, you can see that hex on the top side. So those are done. Now we're gonna get to the tie rods. Okay, so here's our tie rod. We'll get this nut off and pop this out, and then it'll unscrew, or should unscrew, from that back end. We may have to get something on this, to pipe wrench or something, to break it loose. What I don't want to do, again, since I'm trying to get this alignment pretty close, I don't want to unthread this end. This outer end threads onto the inner right here, and there's a nut right here. It's separate, so you have a, like, this threads on, and then you tighten that nut down to hold it in place. But what I don't want to do is I don't want to unthread this from this. Since I have outers and inners both, I want my outer and inner to line up with the same length as this one. And I can't guarantee that all the pieces are the same length, so I want to keep it intact. Like, I've done this before where the outer was a little bit longer or shorter than the factory. So I don't want that to mess up my distance, mess up my geometry, and then the wheel's off. So this is gonna, I'm gonna try to take this off in one piece, put the new pieces together and match them up as close as I can to the exact length. That said, just like before, just in case, I'm gonna mark it. So if it does move, I can put it back where it was, or at least, again, as close as I can get. I'll just paint a line around the threads. So if it threads off, there'll be a hard line where the color is. All right, gonna get that off. That's that 13/16. or 21 millimeter, either one. Pick your poison. Well, these can sometimes be a bit of a bear to get out. We'll try just a hammer. Where's my hammer? There it is. Usually that's good enough. Just like that. All right, so for the inner, that is just that hex is just an adjustment, like a rotational adjustment. This has to be, lined up with your hub here. So once you get this in your right measurement, then you can use that to rotate the whole thing so that this pops down on the hole. And that just rotates inside. On the back side, underneath the truck, there's a really big nut. I guess I got the other one. I can show you. I need to get on this nut in the back, and you see that's pretty big. So I don't have a wrench that big. I'm hoping to be an adjustable wrench I can find that's got that kind of size to it, but we'll see what I got. The only thing I've got that's big enough is a pipe wrench. And so I can get that on there. I don't have anything, I don't have an open end wrench or a crescent wrench that even opens up that big. It's what, about 1.25 inches? So see if I can get under there with a pipe wrench. It's hard to get you under there with me, so I'm just gonna go do it. Just want to show you something that's kind of cool. I don't know, maybe I think it's cool. Maybe you read that. Buick 12. This was my grandpa's wrench. My grandpa worked at Buick in Flint, the old Buick City. And I believe the 12 is building 12 or plant 12. This is where that wrench came from when he retired, or somewhere along the way. He took it home and it got passed through to me. So, what does that say? Die room 56 right here. So that's pretty cool. So my grandpa was worked in engineering, but he worked in the tool and die, and so that's pretty cool. This is probably 50 years old. Still works. All right, I'm gonna get underneath there and try to get this out. Let's see, it's got to go lefty loosey, so it's got to go this way. There we go. I didn't want to come off. It was on the caked on there pretty good. Take off my hand now. It will not. And put blue Loctite on these so they don't like to come loose, which is probably the design. You don't want these unbolting on you. Okay. There we go. Whew. So we'll take this out to the bench and take the other one with us, and we'll put the two pieces together and try to match them up as close as possible to the exact length. Okay, let's get our stuff unpacked here. Let's see, this is going to be, that's the grease zerk and the castle nut that goes on here. There was no pin. It was still in the bag. Okay. And then this is the hardware for this. Yeah, so see, this is that, I said before, this is the nut here. So I want to put these together and line them up. Again, these could be a little off too, so this won't be perfect. You see, this is, I've got a flat edge on it, or at least it had a ridge like this head, but it's worn off. And this has got a little bit of a taper to it. This one doesn't. So really what I want to do is get to center, but this is just hard to do. So I'm going to guess on that as much as I can. Probably go to that zerk fitting because that's dead center, and use this one as a measuring stick. So probably like that, right? And then want to have these line up as best I can on the end of this nut. So this is where it butts up against the arm on the inside, the steering arm. So that's going to be my end point. This Zerk is the other end point. So I want this to line up with this as close as humanly possible. So first we'll thread this on. Just get it some distance past our, like where we think this is going to go. You know, this isn't straight. So I want that to be as straight as possible, because it'll change a little bit. You know, if this is super crooked, then this side's going to be short. So it's, again, it's not exact. Just doing the best I can here. That's pretty close. And this nut, this little hex is a little bit thinner than this one. So you can't use this spot as the line-up point. Just keep threading that in until it lines up. We're pretty close here. Actually, I think we got a little far. Let's back out just a hair. There we go. This isn't remotely scientific, obviously. So I wouldn't, you know, take this as gospel for how you do this. This is just kind of how I do it. And like, I'm no expert for sure. And I'm definitely, most likely, probably, I bet $1 at least, that I'm still gonna have to get an alignment done. I actually think the alignment was kind of off to begin with. So part of this is just to get it back to as bad as it was, then go take it into a shop and have them do it for reals. I'm gonna get something to grip this and tighten that nut. And then I think we'll get it back on the truck and we're good to go. So most I'm just holding this to tighten this. Get it good and tight. There. So that binds with this and keeps that from walking off, hopefully, when I thread this back on. So just a quick check again, make sure I didn't mess up the length in the process. Looks like we're even down here, pretty close here. I think it's about as good as I can get it by eyeballing it. So we'll get this one back on and move on from there. Oh, before I do that, actually, I'm gonna put this in here. Don't over tighten that. It doesn't go in very much and it's pretty soft, so just get it snug. Okay, now we'll get it down into the truck. Tie rod, I'm going that threaded opening back there. Just turn that out of the way there so we can thread this in nice and straight. Just thread that till we can't thread no more, and then we'll get it on the pipe wrench again. I can't really torque this because I don't have any way to measure torque with this pipe wrench. So we're just gonna get it as tight as I can get it, which is kind of how it was when it was on there. Took everything I had to get it loose. Like I said, this also has Loctite on it, so it should hold pretty steady. Now we can rotate this with our, let's go, so we don't accidentally unscrew it. Let's go the tightening route. Oh, it was on the other side. You dummy. It's not, it doesn't go top down. It goes bottom up. Remember? We had to knock it out with a hammer right on top. I need coffee. I don't have the right socket for my torque wrench, so I'm just going to torque it. I'm just going to line up holes so I get that cotter pin through. There we go. I remember my first time. You remember your first time putting on a cotter pin? It feels like today was mine. Okay. Just got to not come out of there. That's the point. All right, this side's done, hopefully. Test drive will tell us for sure. So I'm gonna finish up the other side. We're just gonna basically do the exact same thing. And we'll get that one done. And then we'll get everything put back together and take it for kind of ride around the block. And then come back, get it back up on jacks, get the wheels off, and just re-torque everything just to make sure everything is locked in place, because sometimes things can get bound up and your torque wrench can lie to you here when it's in this state. So you drive it around and it breaks things loose, and then one final tighten. So with the other side, get that side done, and we'll see you in a minute. I did forget to mention before, you put the small, see how it's got a little small ring? That's got the fatter ring. The fat ring goes inside this washer. The small ring will go up through this hole. There we go. Since I'm under here, I gotta grease this one, but I'm gonna grease all the other ones while I'm at it, since I got it up in the air. For greasing, you just want to get that bag to fill. So it doesn't need to be a ton. As soon as you start to see that bag inflate, as it were, then you're good. Oh, that was bad. That one took a lot of grease. Sometimes I don't want to let go. So now we got this all back together. I'm gonna just throw the tires back on. I'm gonna take it for a quick drive around the block. A little quick drive. If anything got bound up, it'll break them loose, and then those nuts will be loose, and so we'll tighten it back up. And then we'll put all this housing and everything back together. Everything looks good. Nothing was really loose after the drive, so that's a good sign. Let's put our wheel well liner back in. I remember where these wires plugged in. I don't remember what clips were where. I'm kind of just making this up as I go now. So it doesn't really matter as long as they stay in, right? Right. Well, I think it's all of them except I've got one left over. I don't know where you go. We'll put you there. So the 8 lug wheels, I do basically two plus signs. So I'll do top, bottom, right, left, upper, right, right, kind of zigzag our way across. Okay, I'm gonna put our decorative cap back on. I don't think these have a particular direction. Nope. Some of them, like the caps, like the Yukon center caps, line up with the nozzle, but this one doesn't. Let's just stick it on. And then these, don't do those with a power tool. They will just snap right off. So these, I just try to kind of find it, do it by hand. So yeah, let's give it a tug, make sure they're on. If you turn them too far, they just pop right back off. Well, so that was a bigger job than I thought it was going to be when I kicked this off. But I thought I was just going to do sway bar links and ended up redoing most of the steering and suspension, the front end. I didn't do the lower ball joints because they didn't seem to be bad. The boots were still intact. They still had grease in them. And so for now, I'm going to leave them. This is one of those things, too, where you can pick and choose what you have to do, right? There's a lot that could have been done in there. Basically all of that steering rack, the idler arm, the pitman arm, that could all have been replaced. All of it probably should be at some point in the not too distant future. It didn't have to be done today. And that's one of those things when you're doing this work, you take this, if I take this to a shop and say, hey, looks like I need new shocks because those shocks were just rattling around there. So can you replace the shocks? They would have wanted to replace everything in there. And they wouldn't have probably let me just do the shock. They would have just sent me home. They would have wanted to do all of that work. And they have liability to deal with, right? They've got people who are going to sue them and people who are going to give bad reviews on Yelp or whatever. So I get it. I'm not totally knocking it, although sometimes I think there's some shops out there that aren't, kind of incentivize you to do more than you really need to get done so they can make more money. That's true. I don't just want to generalize all shops as being that way. You don't have to do the whole thing when you do it yourself. You can do the things that are most important and they're within the budget you have. So I didn't do all of that idler arm, pitman arm, all of the rest of that steering stuff. I didn't do the lower ball joint. I didn't end up doing the sway bar links. I'll probably send them back. I might keep them because they're going to have to be done eventually. But, to save some money, I can send those back. Now we've got where we can work within our budget. This was about $260, $280. I had some coupons. I had a gift balance at Amazon from a return. So I didn't spend, it was probably pushing $280 or so. And I was picking and choosing where I was buying the stuff from. So I make sure I get both the right deal and use all of the gift cards and discounts I have and get it all in a day. So I could get this all done over the weekend. That's the advantage of doing this work. I always say this when I say try to get, help you build your confidence to do some of this work yourself. This is partly why, is you can save yourself a ton of money, not just in the labor, right? Because just the work I did would have cost me, I don't know, $700-800, maybe more, to have a professional do it. But also, that wouldn't have been what I got done. They would have wanted to do all other stuff, and that would have pushed the cost up to $1,000, $1,500 to redo this entire front end. And it didn't need to be done. So I not only saved on the labor for what I did, I saved on the labor for what I didn't do. And of course, saved on the parts too. This is why I always want to instill this confidence in you guys that you can do this work yourself. This is basic mechanical stuff. Turn a nut, turn a wrench, right? Hit it with a hammer. The only thing that's a little bit on the advanced side is those tie rods, particularly because, you know, you mess up your steering geometry. But even if you don't get it right, as long as you're close enough where you don't have one wheel that's like pointed this way and the other wheel straight and you're just like shaking down the road, you just take it down to your local shop and have them do an alignment. You know, I'll have to do that too, because when I took it for the test drive, my steering wheel is just a little to the right. Not a big deal. It's gonna drive me nuts, so I'll probably get an alignment done. I was close, but didn't quite get there. That's all you're gonna do is get close. 60 bucks or 80 bucks or something like that for an alignment. I think there's a local shop that does it for 50. But of course they're very busy and I can never get in there. So still, not that much money if you redo the front end. It made a world of difference. What I thought was just a rattle from that sway bar link was really like the whole front end was rattling, and I couldn't really feel it until I fixed it. Once I fixed it, now I can tell it's way smoother. Hope you enjoyed that. Like I said, I hope you learned something. Hope you gain a little confidence to do some of this work yourself. You can do this. Appreciate you guys very much. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.